Hey everybody, this is Flavio Romeo, and on this episode of the Towncast, we had the opportunity of talking to Rachel Owen, who is the CEO of Infinite Worth, which is an incredible organization that helps women across the country that are in distress, whether it's an unplanned pregnancy or they have suicidal thoughts or domestic violence, whatever the case may be. They have volunteers and nurses across the country answer the calls 24/7. It really is an amazing organization. All right, enjoy the episode, everybody. All right, everybody. This is a Zoom episode of the Towncast, and I'm really excited to talk to Rachel Owen. She is the CEO of an organization called Infinite Worth, and after the episode that we did with Lighthouse, for those of you that watched that or heard that, it really prompted me to learn more about what Rachel's been doing. So, Rachel, thank you so much for joining.
Oh, I am so blessed to be here. Thank you for
Yeah,
having me.
yeah, so now you're the CEO of Infinite Worth. First, let's talk a little bit about Infinite Worth. Tell me a little bit more about it.
Yeah, Infinite Worth is a 24/7 nurse chat line. And we're actually there in the middle of the night for women that are considering having an abortion or who are in crisis, right? So they're very vulnerable. And so they're looking for someone to chat with, someone to talk with in the middle of the night. And research shows that. Nurses are the most trusted profession of the last 30 years. And so we have nurses there, medical professionals who are there to ask and answer any questions that they might have about just the crisis that they're in.
Yeah, now talk a little bit about the different crises, the different calls that you've had to deal with over the past.
Yeah. Oh gosh. So it's a full array. Sometimes, a woman is just feeling overwhelmed because she is facing an unplanned pregnancy. Maybe she's got several children. Maybe she's going through a divorce. You know, maybe she's has some mental health issues and she just needs to talk to someone, walk her through this, or maybe she needs to meet with someone about her options. Right? What are her options? Someone who cares about her and her future and her health. And then a lot of times what we're seeing is women who are contemplating having an abortion, and maybe they've ordered the abortion pill online, or maybe they've scheduled an abortion appointment, but they're having second thoughts. Research shows that actually 80% of women after they have that abortion regret that decision. And so we really want to be there for her whenever she's available, whether it's the middle of the night or during her coffee break at work. We can be there texting with her, answering those questions, wrapping around her, helping her walk through that whole process, right? And then getting her connected with a pregnancy resource center or pregnancy medical clinic to have follow up, people in her community that will love and care for her. So those are the kind of clients that we're dealing with. We're also dealing with a lot of domestic violence. Sometimes some of these precious young women are in a very volatile situation that's very violent and dangerous. And so we're able to help them walk through that and get out of that situation where they may not have the support from other places and they may not know where to get support. And so we're able to get them hooked to resources. And what's really incredible is we're seeing a rise in young women reaching out to us who are in the middle of trafficking and they don't even know it. They're being trafficked, and we're able to walk that with them, beside them, and then get them the resources they need to get out of that situation. So it can go from anyone who's just a single mom or not a single mom to someone who is in um, a real dangerous situation. So we have this full gamut, but we're able to be there for her whenever she's needing us.
Well, then, the great thing about that is that your nurses and the people that are answering the phones, they're not judgmental. They're
No.
there for
Mm-mm.
support, because oftentimes
Yeah.
we go to our friends, we can't even go to our family because we're embarrassed or, whatever the case may
Mhm.
be. And, we reach out to friends or neighbors or, and they're not professionals. You know, they,
Yeah.
they, they're going to give you their perspective. Um, so, so I think it's critical that people have the resource. And that's what I loved about Lighthouse was that no matter where
Mhm.
you're at, there are people that are going to help you through it, talk you through it, and listen. They're listening.
Yeah.
They're not ready to give you their opinions. They're sitting there and they're listening.
Yeah.
So how long has Infinite Worth been around?
Yeah. We've been around about going on 3 years now. And it's been fulfilling a niche that's been needed, right? Gen Z and older, I like to text too, but Gen Z spends about 12 hours a day texting, right? And that's a
12
lot.
hours a
That
day.
12 to 16, some maybe even more, 12 to 16 hours a day texting. And so that's their love language. That's how they're used to communication. Actually, they have a little bit of anxiety when it comes to talking on the phone. It's kind of intense, right? It's too much, and especially when they're in crisis, we can't ask them to do something that they're normally not going to do anyway, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we're meeting them somewhere where they're comfortable, and so we've seen this. I actually was an executive director of pregnancy centers for 15 years, over 7 centers. I loved building centers. I loved being there face to face with women and loving them well. But what we saw in our center was we saw a decrease in the amount of the Gen Z that were coming in. We did a great job ministering to the millennials, taking care of them, unjudgmental, just walking them through this huge life changing event, right? And caring for them medically, making sure that their health is of the highest consideration. But what we saw when the times changed is that the Gen Z wasn't coming in. And so we sat back and thought, hey, okay, we need to make some changes here on how we're communicating. And once we dug in and saw the research, we're like, well, we should be reaching to them where
Wow.
they're at, which is on their phone, right? They're literally on their phone. And do you believe it or not? They literally watch 6 hours of 2-minute videos every day. That's how they get their news. That's how they get their information. That is, so if we're going to love them,
Scary.
yeah, well, it's just how it is right now.
Yeah.
And if we're going to love them well and meet their needs and care for them and their health and their future, we got to be on the phone. We got to be right there where they're at, where they're Googling. We'll be we'll be sitting there chatting with girls. Our nurses will be chatting with them as they're sitting next to their parents on the couch.
Right.
They're texting our nurses about their unplanned pregnancy, telling her things that they're not able to tell their parents, right? And their parents are kind of oblivious because they're watching reels on their phone too. I'm guilty. We're all guilty, right? We can't point fingers here. We're all guilty of it, but it's this huge gap that we have in this precious generation. And if we're gonna do our job and do it well, we need to be there for them. So that's really where this all came out of, was my experience in the pregnancy centers, wanting to reach more, wanting to make sure that women had the help that they needed and the information they needed to make a choice that's right for them, right? To make a choice that's fully informed.
Yeah, right, exactly. You get all the information first and then make a decision
Yes.
based on that. Is there is
Yeah.
how do they reach you or how do they I mean if they're in a remote area, I mean this is you're obviously covering almost coast to coast, right?
Yeah, yeah. So we're partnering right now with almost 600 pregnancy locations. We've partnered with them. What we do is we take a little pop-up widget. We call it a little widget, and it has a picture of a nurse on it, and it goes on their website and it says, hey, you have questions about abortions, have questions about an unplanned pregnancy, whatever the center wants to put on there. And then that pops up when they come surfing through, that pops up. And of course, this precious generation, and even, you know, the I am very guilty of this. I have no patience when it comes to waiting, right? If they can't interact with you immediately, 70 95% of the time they will go to your competition. They'll just move right on. And so if you don't have a place on your website to interact with this precious young woman who's in crisis immediately, she'll go to your competition. And so and in this case, the competition is, maybe doesn't have her best interest in mind because they're making a lot of money off of her choice, right? And so what we are is we're there, as you know, like Lighthouse, they are there and not making any money off of that young woman. They're there to love her, to unbiasedly walk her through this with gentleness, care for her. They know the stats that 80 to 90% of women regret their abortions after they have them. And so they go in with this heart to serve well. And so that was really our intent, is to, how do we reach this next generation and how do we do it well? And so that's where we really came up, and that's how they reach us. We also have national websites that we're working with, national adoption websites, national ministry websites that are using our widget. And then what we're able to do is take those young women that are vulnerable in that situation and then also plug them into our safety net of centers that we have across the country where they can get those resources. Sometimes we're talking to a young woman who's suicidal, right? And so we're able to get her the resources she needs immediately, and she may not know where and how to reach out. And so we're able to meet that need. And also recovery. Maybe she's had trauma, and we're able to get her into some beautiful post-abortive care that can really help that the trauma that she's just walked through.
Yeah, and I know most of these resource centers are nonprofit. They're not,
Yeah.
it's all donations and people
Yeah.
donating their money, donating their time,
Mm-hmm.
volunteering, and
Mm-hmm.
work with over 600 of them across the country. So listen, if you, people that are watching, people that are listening, if you know of a resource center in the area that's not affiliated with Infinite Worth, I'd recommend that they go to infiniteworth.org, and you can go to
Yeah.
infinite.org and see what they do and who they minister to and who they talk to and who they help. Especially I had a cousin that relative that was trafficked and is now working for one of the New Jersey organizations against human trafficking. And like you said, people sometimes they don't know it. They don't, especially women, they don't know that they're being trafficked. They don't know that they're being exploited. They're in it and then they don't know how to get out of it. So the fact that you offer that comfort, that safe space that people can call up and just learn about their options, like what can they do? How can they get out of it? And even
Mm-hmm.
domestic violence being the number one reason why police officers are called still
Mm-hmm.
to this day across the country is domestic violence and working with and helping women with options and with how do they get out of it, and because oftentimes they feel like they're in a box and they just can't get out. So yeah, I encourage you to go to infiniteworth.org and see what they're doing. So you've been there how long? 3 years? Were you there since it started? Since it
Yes, yes. So Brandon Monahan, who from Heritage House. Now Heritage House has been around, oh gosh, 50 plus years. And they are an incredible organization. They're a for-profit organization, but he wanted to start a organization that was nonprofit that could really reach women who were in crisis and help and wrap around pregnancy centers, really creating extra hands for them. And so then he called me up and we had this, I didn't even know I was in an interview. He just asked me my testimony. He asked my background. And then he's in the middle of it. He's like, the Holy Spirit just told me to hire you to run this. And he's like, and usually I don't hear that kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, but anyway, so I told him I would think about it and pray about it. And I came back 24 hours later and I said, yes, I will do it if we can do it with nurses and if we can do it 24/7, because that's what I saw work in our organization, right? That in our centers that I was running and loving and enjoying. And we saw that once we had the 24/7 on call, we saw a 50% reduction in abortion in our state, right? And so that's really huge. That means that we were there for them in the middle of the night. And that was over a 10-year period. So it was slow, but it was beautiful. So we had some good results. And that's what we've been seeing for the last 3 years is just incredible results. So he hired me to get it started. So didn't have anything going on it yet. And so I love starting new things. I love getting going with new ideas and new ministries. I just love high level visionary. So I jumped in, and I encourage anyone out there who has something on their heart um, uh, that they have a vision to bless others with. Man, jump in. It's not hard. It's not hard to start a 501c3. It's not hard to start a nonprofit. It's really relatively easy. The paperwork only takes you about 70 hours. It's really, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not much at all. And so I love to encourage other people who are visionaries to jump into that. It's just exciting to start ministries and to start something that gives back, right? Like it's so important. I know I was having babies. I have 6 beautiful children. I was having babies and I was dealing with some stuff and, some postpartum. And one of the things I read this beautiful book and it just talked about depression and postpartum and how, I love the story. So it was actually Mother Teresa. They did research and they took a bunch of college students and they had them watching Mother Teresa do what Mother Teresa did, right? Mother Teresa just loved people unconditionally. She just walked with them as they were dying of AIDS, right? Like she cared for them, bathed them, clothed them, fed them as they were dying. They gave her nothing in return, right? And so these college students were just watching her do that, and their antibodies went up and their depression went down. And so I'm like, oh, wow. And so then I started coaching others in that. Like, if we're giving to others, we're healthier, we're stronger, we're more vibrant, we're actually better parents, we're better spouses, we're better human beings if we're loving and caring for others. And so that's what really motivated me 20 years ago, just to get out of myself and to love others well. Maybe it was alternative mode just to get my mental health back, but it was also to be an example to my children. This is how you live and be healthy. And I wanted my children to be healthy too. So that's really what motivated me, is just getting loving others well, loving others well.
Yeah, and I feel like there's some of that when it comes to volunteering.
Yes.
So many communities. I had the opportunity of talking to our local mayor, and I know several people in the fire department, the ambulance corps, and so many of these small towns. I don't know how it is by you, but they're all volunteers. Nobody's getting.
Yeah. Mhm.
You still go through all the training as if you're going to be a professional firefighter, professional EMS, but you're volunteering. You're giving of your time, and I feel like oftentimes, when you're volunteering and you're doing things for others, like you said, it does pull you out of the rut that you might be in. Like, because you're so
Mhm.
self-absorbed when you start opening yourself up to helping others, I feel like there's a change. There is definitely a change. Now, if there are nurses that are watching, can they contact you, or if they want to be involved in something like this? How would
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if they go to infiniteworth.org, we have a spot on there for volunteers. We love volunteer nurses, actually. I think nurses are the salt of the earth. They're the most amazing people in the world. I'm always bragging on nurses, right? They give so much of themselves. Actually, I have 2 daughters that are now wanting to go. Well, one's in nursing school, the other one's wanting to go. And my husband's like, it's because you're bragging on nurses all the time, honey. But nurses are incredible human beings, and we need lots of volunteer nurses actually on the chat line, where we do have paid positions, but we also have volunteer positions that are really vitally important to our success, right? So right now we're doing about 17,000 conversations a month, and that
17,000 conversations per month?
17,000 conversations, and actually I can't raise enough
Almost
funds to
200,000 a
pay
year.
that.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we're just growing. Every month we're growing. It's exponentially. Like probably this month we'll hit 20,000. And
That just
so there's
that just shows you how much need is out there.
it's
Wow,
huge. It
20,000
is
a month.
huge. And in with some of the centers we've partnered with, we're tripling the amount of women that are coming in the doors. So by just having that little widget on their website, so this is powerful. But we also, I can't raise funds fast enough to bring that in. So we need volunteers, right? And I always tell people, hey, if you volunteer for us and we see that you love it and you're doing great, then you'll probably get hired eventually. So volunteer first and see if it's something you like, and then we'll look at that, because I always hire out of my volunteer team. So I'm always looking for amazing human beings that love life, love others well. That's
Yeah.
what we're looking for here.
Well, I feel like my brother's a nurse practitioner, and I feel like, I mean, you're giving of yourself, especially when they were going through COVID, which was a nightmare
Yeah.
for all the first responders.
Mm-hmm.
There is a giving part of their heart that put them in that position. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I too give them a ton of credit. I think, they're the unsung heroes most of the
Yeah.
time. You don't know who they are. They just come in and out. If you go to the hospital, and especially on a phone conversation, you don't know who they are. They're very, they're there for you. It doesn't matter who they are. They're there for you. And I also tell a lot of people, we've interviewed several nonprofits, and like any nonprofit, whether it's a church organization or a pregnancy resource center, they're clearly always looking for donations. And for the pregnancy resource centers, it could be diapers, it could be clothing, it could be anything, toys. Um, and I know that, it's when you go through economic issues, it's difficult to give money, but there's always time. You can always give
Yeah.
time. And a lot of these nonprofits, they're constantly looking for volunteers, whether it's to hand out food at the food pantry or pack clothes into a bin, or, wash clothes, or whatever the case may be. And so I encourage anybody that's listening, anybody that's watching, if you know someone that's a nurse, if you yourself are a nurse and you want to give a little bit of time to help these women in need. And now, question, do you deal with men too? I mean, have you gotten male
Yeah.
that call up in crisis mode too?
Yes, we do. We do, especially because it is focused on unplanned pregnancies and it's focused on that strain. We do get young men who come on so often, who are like, "Hey, my girlfriend's pregnant. What do I do? She wants to have an abortion. I would rather parent." We hear a lot of that, and just coaching them, loving them, getting them connected also to the pregnancy resource centers. A lot of pregnancy resource centers have beautiful men's ministries that wrap around young men and old men too, and love them well, and walk them through fatherhood so that it's not so scary, because sometimes fatherhood is scary. I love to tell this story. My husband does not like this story, so we just won't tell it to him again. Okay, so just don't tell my husband this story. But I was in the pregnancy center, and we had a young girl in the back, and she was doing an ultrasound, and she really wanted this baby, and she kept saying that her boyfriend really didn't want her to have this baby, and she was very, very, very upset. And her friend was in the waiting room, and then in walks this young man, and he is just madder than a hornet. He is mad. He comes in screaming and yelling, and he's like, "Where's she at? She's having an abortion. She's not gonna do this." And he had a firearm in his pocket. You could see the outline of it, and he wanted that to be in his pocket, and you could tell. And I'm like, well, okay, so we have safety precautions, but the safety precautions ends with the director, right? Like you're so I just said, okay, I just had my team go in the back, and I walked out and sat right next to him, because I had him sit down and just decompress him, and down next to him. And I asked him, I said, "Are you scared?" And he said, "I might be." And I just sat there. I just sat there because, I wasn't going to let him shoot everybody up, right? And that's not his intent. Sometimes we just have to be in the middle. And he said, he just got real quiet. And then he looked at me with big tears in his eyes. And he said, "Is it hard to be a parent?"
Oh,
He was just overwhelmed and scared. And then, of course, we just talked and talked and talked about parenting and being a father and um, what does it take and how we would be there for him and how we would help him and how there's community for him. He doesn't have to be what he saw growing up, right? He was afraid. He was afraid of what he grew up in. He didn't want to duplicate, right? And then he got up just abruptly as he walked in and left, and then was without his firearm, and then came back in and sat down, and we were able to get him hooked up with some incredible ministries that could walk young men through being a father. So that's really extreme. My husband doesn't like that story, but anyways.
but it's reality. I mean, it happened. If it happened to you, it's happened other
Yeah.
places.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And so it is a privilege to be there with them. Actually, I just got off of a phone call today with a pregnancy center who is launching a big, beautiful men's ministry to be there for young men, to be there and to help our chat line connect those young men to them that we do see. And I don't know, I don't want to get too out there, but when Charlie Kirk passed away a couple of weeks ago, um, we had a huge influx of young men calling and said that they wanted to be fathers and they didn't want their girlfriends to have abortions and that they wanted to do what was right by their girlfriends. And it was huge. And so we're seeing this movement, this beautiful, and we can see it right on the chat line. It's so incredible. It was so overwhelming. My nurses were in tears. They're like, these guys are so precious. They're so precious, and they want to do what's right. It's just that they don't have the leadership, maybe in their homes or in their history. But there's things that we can do, right? Like I always encouraging men who are like, "Hey, I can't do anything at a pregnancy center." I'm like, "Oh yes, you can. You can totally be available for these young men. Call them and say, 'Hey, I would be willing to mentor a young man.'" The thing is, though, I'll tell you, it's muddy. It's muddy. It's messy. Helping people that are broken it's messy, but that's what he calls us to do, right? Is to get messy. Say we're called to be messy. Sometimes we're called to love others well and to get into the mud and not judge, but just help them walk through healing.
Right.
And so that's really what it's about, right? Like that's what it's about.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the men aspect of it because oftentimes with men, I know myself, it's pride. You don't want to expose your weakness. You don't want anybody to see how damaged you are or how broken you are,
Mhm.
sad or
Mhm.
scared or any of those emotions. You don't want people to know that you're human.
Mhm.
And that's why I appreciated Lighthouse, and I'm sure, so many other pregnancy resource centers have that side of it where they can talk to men and they can share their fears and just understand what's going to happen the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days after she has her baby.
Yes.
Um, and it's great that you do that. And again, I encourage anybody that's listening or watching, if you want to volunteer, infiniteworth.org, and you'll see, a place where you can put in that you want to volunteer. And it's helping others. And I think that's, you know, very early on, it was all villages, and you always hear the expression
Yeah.
village.
Yeah.
And we've
Hmm.
gotten so big with 350 million people in this country that we forget that, there's still a village of people that want to help. It's not all as bad as you see on the news. You know,
Hmm.
most of the people are out there are good people and they're willing
Good.
to help. And being able to have that resource that you guys provide is tremendous.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is there one story that you love to share about, your time at Infinite Worth?
Oh
I mean,
gosh, we
other,
got
other than the gun story.
Oh, well, that wasn't even with Infinite Worth. That was way back in my I
Oh,
guess
and
my
your resource center days?
my resource center days. Yeah, yeah. Anyways, no, but there's one story. It was actually when we first started. That was just it really showed the passion of the nurses and just our intent. We got a text from a young girl. She was living in her car. She was very pregnant, very far along, and she was in a southern state along the coast, just living in her car. And she had just lost her, I think it was her boyfriend, and to drugs. So the father of the baby, she had lost the father of the baby to drugs. His life had been ended, and I was never really sure what happened to him at all. I never did get that full story, but her story was she was in that car and she really was just emotionally tapped. She had nothing left to give, and she's no way she could think. She was mourning the father of the baby, and she had nothing. She was just destitute, no food, no nothing, and pregnant in her car. And she wanted an abortion, and she wasn't going to have any pregnancy center. She didn't want anything to do with the pregnancy center. She just wanted an abortion. And so the nurses were like, hey, well, you know what? We care about you. Can I touch base with you tomorrow? And they answered her questions. She had different questions and things. And so the nurse touched base with her the next day, but the nurse came with resources. She said, hey, you know what? I found a place for you to have lunch today. You told me where you're at, so I found a place for you to have lunch. So why don't you go have some lunch and get some good food in your belly? I know that always helps to have some good food. And so then this went on for 2 weeks.
Wow.
For 2 weeks, this girl was like, hey, no, I have to have an abortion. I can't deal with life right now. I can't even take care of myself. And each day the nurse would say, hey, I found a place where you can take a shower and you can get some help, and then and have a meal. And the next day, hey, I found a shelter that you can stay in for a few days. And so this went on and on. And then after that 2 weeks, we actually were able to get her connected, not only with the Pregnancy Resource Center. She was open to it. She just needed to show that we were serious when we said we loved her and we would be there for her. And we actually got her connected with a maternity home, and she placed that baby for adoption. And she was able to get some rehab herself. Oops. Sorry about that. I'm so sorry.
Was that a cat?
No, that was a fly. There's one lone fly
The
in
fly
here.
landed right on the camera? That's
I'm
hysterical.
so sorry.
Oh, it's awesome. That's great. That's so
No,
funny.
that's not. I live in the country. I live on a farm.
Well, you're gonna have
So,
a fly or two.
well, gosh, I have one in the whole house, and it's right here beside me. Gosh darn it. I'm so sorry. You'll have to edit that
He
out.
wanted his 15 seconds of fame.
He wanted his 15 seconds. So, anyways, she got connected with that maternity home, and she was able to just continue with her life and to get the rehab that she needed, and that baby was placed in the home. So I love that story because that's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
It really shows what the nurses do and how they love, and we're not just here for one night. We're getting them connected into that pregnancy center. We're getting them connected for the resources that they need at that time and that they're in crisis.
Well, and it also says something about, a woman who's in distress. Like deep down, it may not be the decision that she wants, but she doesn't know what else to do.
No option. Mhm.
So reaching out to any of the resource centers and on your website, can they find resource centers near them, or is there a map, or they just look it up like Google resource center?
Yeah. So we have, if they talk to the nurses, our widget is on that website. And if they talk to the nurses, so if anybody out there is experiencing a crisis right now that's listening, they can get on that infiniteworth.org, and their nurse little widget is right there. They can
When you
talk
have
to
it there, so they can just click right on it.
They can click right on it, and we'll get them connected anywhere in the country. We can get them connected to help all kinds of resources. So if anyone has any kind of problem at all. We can help them get connected. One of the things research shows, and this is my favorite of all, I just love this. Research shows that 60% of women that were considering having an abortion, if one person in their life would have said one positive word about their unplanned pregnancy, they wouldn't have gone through with that. So it's really about just supporting her verbally, letting her know that she's not alone, letting her know that life is valuable and beautiful. And we're just in this crisis for a little bit, right? I know my mother had an unplanned pregnancy when she was in high school. Um, and that was me. And she chose to carry me, she chose to parent me. And you know what? I know she loves my brothers, but I'm kind of her. No, I tease my brothers that I'm her favorite. Okay, but we're best friends, and she's so thankful that she didn't miss out on her best friend. And it was just a hard time for a few years, and now we have this beautiful life. She's an amazing grandmother to my six beautiful children, and I love life to the fullest, and I live my life like that. So,
Oh, that's awesome. Right. I have to tell you, I really, my heart goes out to you and all the nurses, all the volunteers, everybody that's doing what they can at Infinite Worth, and you guys connecting with more and more research resource centers around the country. And again, if anybody is looking to volunteer, anybody that wants to get involved in an organization like this, or if you do have the money and you do want to donate $5, $10, whatever it is, if one person in this country donated $1 to any of the nonprofits, that'd be $350 million, and that's it. You can say.
there wouldn't be any needs, we would
Right,
be filling
right,
all the needs, and we'd have a really
exactly.
healthy, strong country.
Yeah, because people
We're
oftentimes,
old.
yeah, they
Go
were just
ahead. I'm
going to say,
sorry.
oftentimes they think, well, a dollar's not going to do anything. But you get enough dollars and it adds up. So I encourage you to go to infiniteworth.org if you're a nurse or you're a gentleman that wants to donate their time, be on the phone, help some of these young men and women or these older men and women. I encourage you guys to reach out. So Rachel Owen, thank you so much. God bless you. I wish you all the best at Infinite Worth. I know you guys are going to continue growing as you have been over the last 3 years. To go from nothing to almost 20,000 calls a month, that
Mhm.
shows you the need that's out there.
It's huge. It really is huge. Well, thank you so much for having me and letting me share what we've been doing. I just am trying to get the word out that this is growing so quickly, and it is a space that you can have great fruit, right? You sow into a ministry like this, and there is great fruit.
Yeah, well, hang on, don't go away. I'm going to sign off and then come back to you.
Okay.
Hang on. All right, everybody. So listen, again, go to infiniteworth.org, learn more about this organization. If you want to donate your money, that's wonderful. If you want to donate your time, that's wonderful. And love the fact that Rachel was saying that just that spirit of giving your time and volunteering, it adds years to your life. I believe that. So make sure you go to infiniteworth.org. And if you are in need or you know somebody that's in need, direct them there and have them tap on the little widget and they'll connect with someone right away. All right. Be well, everybody.